For the past 3 months, I've been testing the new generation of the Form Smart swim goggles. In this video, I'm going to cover what's new about them, what are the pros, what are the cons, and are they worth getting? And are they worth upgrading if you've got the Generation 1 version of the goggles? Now, full disclosure, Form have been a sponsor of our podcast for the last couple of years, so they do sponsor our podcast. They are not sponsoring this video, so this is not a paid video. However, if you do choose to purchase the goggles through our link below, we will get a small commission from that. This is my honest review. There are things I don't like about the goggles, which I will talk about as well in this video. So what have Form added to the goggles in this new generation? The first thing and the main thing, and my favorite thing about it, is the heart rate monitor. There is a heart rate monitor that sits on the side of the goggles here, and it just sits on your temple. This has been very reliable when I've tested it. So the only time it hasn't really worked for me is if it's gone to sit underneath my cap, or if it's just not sitting in the right position. But 95% of the time or more, it's getting the data, it's taking my heart rate, and it seems very accurate. So I think the heart rate monitor is the best addition to the new version of the goggles. I actually purchased a separate Polar heart rate monitor about 18 months ago, and I never set it up because it was just that one additional step that I had to take to go to my swim. Whereas with this, it's integrated into the goggles. You don't need to do anything apart from just put the goggles on, start it, and off you go. So I like that it's integrated as part of the goggles and there's no additional equipment that you need to start using that heart rate monitor. Your heart rate's gonna sit in the top corner of the goggles. So to be able to see what my heart rate is within a session has been really eye-opening. If you know what your training zones are and you know what zones you're trying to stick to when you swim, this is a great addition, because I found that in a lot of the swims I was doing, I was going well above aerobic zone when I shouldn't have been. So to actually see that data in front of me, rather than just take it after an interval on the wall, which is fairly inaccurate, then it's made a huge difference to actually making sure I can sit in the right training zone when I am going through my different intervals. So I think that is the best addition by far, and I really love that feature. That is one key reason to upgrade from the Gen 1 to the Gen 2. Another addition is the swim straight feature that they've added. Now what this is it will tell you the direction that you are going when you are swimming. It's got a little marker on the goggles, and it's going to show you the degrees that you're going out of 360 degrees. And it's just going to move depending on which way you are heading. And it's very accurate. I'm really pleased with how accurate this is. So if you have a tendency to go off course, which I definitely do, then this is a really good way to make sure you swim in a much straighter and direct line. And there are a lot of triathlon organizations out there that have approved the use of the goggles in their races. And so that can help you within your races. Now, one caveat there, you still need to sight, you still need to be aware of your surroundings. So you can't just use this swim straight feature and just go head down without looking at all. You still need to sight and be aware of those other things that are happening. So it doesn't take away that need for that to happen. However, it does allow you to swim in a much straighter line, and you'll notice how quickly you do tend to veer offline. From my understanding, it is being added, or it has been added to the Gen 1 version of the goggles as well. So if you do have those, then you can still use that swim straight feature. To set it up, you just need to go through an orientation process before you swim.
Look down to the ground, bring your head back up, bring your head to your ear to your right shoulder, to your left shoulder, then you've got to look around.
It will tell you once it's all set up. Pretty quick, happens in about 10 seconds, really easy to do, and that just allows you to use this swim straight feature. A few changes that they've made to the goggles. The computer on the side is 15% smaller. When I compare it to the other one here, it actually looks probably more like 20 to 30% smaller, but they say it's 15% smaller, so I'll take their word for it. Does it change the impact it has when you are in a high drag scenario, like when you push off or dive in? A little bit, you notice that a little bit, but not a huge amount. The goggles still sit a fair way off your face, so they're still relatively high profile instead of low profile, but it is a little bit better. I did find occasionally, if I pushed off too quickly or the goggles weren't sort of tight enough with the Gen 1, I would sometimes get a little bit of water in the goggles. Not often, but occasionally. That's certainly happened a lot less with these goggles, just because of the less drag that you've got with the slightly smaller computer. But they are still relatively high profile and come off the face a bit. So would I dive off the blocks with them and use them in a pool competition like that? no, I couldn't keep them on properly, I'd say, because of how far they do sit off the face. But I use them in training and totally fine for pushing off the wall, coming off the wall in your turns and those sorts of things. Another change is that they've now got the straps running or starting a little bit further away from the edge of the goggles. This does help the goggles sit on a little bit better, and I think that also contributes to not letting water in when you do push off and you've got your most speed. Whereas you'll see with the old version of the goggles, the straps start a little bit closer to the lens, whereas this just sits a little bit further along, and so I find that does help a little bit as well. So I do like that addition. I imagine that they've just added that in because of the heart rate monitor, and so they want to be able to make sure that that sits close to the face, but it works well. I think it's a nice addition. The other thing that they've changed is the eye socket. Slightly different fit. That as well seems pretty good. That's supposed to fit more face profiles, and I think it is just a little bit more comfortable. One thing I did note is that it took 5 or 6 sessions for this rubber on the edges to become a bit softer. So at the start it was quite hard. I got a little bit of a mark at the start in those first few sessions, but after 5 or 6 sessions, the rubber did soften up and it became a lot more comfortable after that. There's 5 nose pieces, so 5 different sizes you can use. And I'd say that'll fit most people with those 5 different size nose clips here. Depending on whether you get the Gen 1 or the Gen 2 version of the goggles, they all come with the head coach feature, which can tell you how you're going with your head position, how long it takes you to bring your head back to neutral after you take a breath, and how far are you turning or lifting your head to breathe. Those features, I've had a lot of athletes who have used those to help correct their head position and their breathing position, which I think is a really good feature. And it's really easy to use. You can use it in real time. And for people who have trouble making changes or knowing if they're in the right position, I think the head coach feature is really good. And it comes on Gen 1 and comes on Gen 2. So it doesn't matter which version of the goggles you get. Now you can still purchase the Gen 1 goggles. They are cheaper. So they're about $70 less. And if you purchase through our link below, you can save 15% off on the Gen 1 version, but they're not doing any discounts or coupons on the new generation of the goggles. So if you do go through our link, there is no discount there, but we will get that small commission if you choose to purchase them. So after all that, is it worth getting the Form Smart swim goggles and specifically the Gen 2 version of them? I think if you're a triathlete and you are interested in what your heart rate is doing and you do train using zones and you're familiar with that type of training, maybe you come from a running or a cycling background and you're familiar with what types of training zones you should be in for different workouts or within your session, I think the heart rate monitor is a really good addition, and it's something that I've really enjoyed using and continue to use. Is it worth upgrading from Gen 1 to Gen 2? Again, I think if you are a triathlete and you do really like the zones, then I think it is something that is quite good to do. Now, you can add some heart rate monitor to the Gen 1 version of the goggles. So if you've got a swimming heart rate monitor, whether it's a chest strap or what you might have one of the polar heart rate monitors, I think they can be added to the Gen 1. So it really just depends on whether you want to spend the money or not. So depends on the person, I would say. But I do really like the new Gen 2 versions. I think it's a good improvement from Gen 1. I use these once or twice a week when I'm swimming regularly. And I really do like the Form goggles. Originally, when they came out, I thought, nah, not for me. I'm not gonna try them because I like to be quite minimal when it comes to the tech side of things when I'm swimming. But they did send me a version of the goggles a couple years back. I tried them and I was convinced that they're actually a really good tool to use. I don't use them all the time. I don't use them in all my sessions. I do like that feeling of just going tech-free in some of my swims, which I think is a great thing and I really enjoy. But I do also love the tech when I do use it. And if I'm doing any sessions that I'm looking to hit certain paces and I'm looking to track my times and track my stroke count and that kind of thing, I actually do think these are a great addition. So the Gen 2 version of the Form goggles, I really like the additions, particularly the heart rate monitor. That's certainly my favorite addition to these goggles. So have you used the Gen 1 version? Are you going to get Gen 2? What do you think of the Form goggles and these new additions? Let me know in the comments below.